Hey everyone! Today, we're jumping into something really cool in Python, conditionals. This is where we go from just giving our code a list of chores to actually teaching it how to make decisions. Basically, our code is about to get a whole lot smarter. So let's get right to it.
I want you to think about this for a second. What if your code could do more than just run from top to bottom? What if it could actually look at a situation, react to it, and choose what to do next? And that is exactly what conditionals are all about. They're the very first step toward writing code that feels intelligent.
So, what's really going on here? Well, at the end of the day, a conditional is just your code asking a super simple question, yes or no. And depending on that answer, it decides which fork in the road to take. This is how we give our programs a sense of logic.
So let's put a name to this. A conditional statement is basically a special block of code that only runs if its condition is met. And that question it's asking, it always boils down to a simple true or false. In programming, we call that a Boolean expression.
To ask these questions, we use these tools, comparison operators. Now, most of these probably look familiar from math class, but I want you to pay close attention to the double equals sign. This one trips everyone up at first. A single equal sign is a command, like x equals 5. You're telling Python what to do. But a double equal sign, that's a question. You're asking Python, hey, is x really equal to 5? Getting this right is absolutely key.
Okay, enough talk. Let's actually write some code. We're going to use the if keyword to have our program compare two numbers. Now, this first attempt, it's going to work. It'll give us the right answer. But, and this is a big but, it's not very smart. Let me show you what I mean.
So imagine x is 1 and y is 2. The code checks the first line. If x is less than y. Yep, that's true. So it prints x is less than y. Great. But then it just keeps going. It still asks, is x greater than y? Nope. Is x equal to y? Nope. It's wasting its time. It already found the one and only answer, but it's programmed to ask every single question anyway.
And right there, that's the whole point of what we're talking about today. Look, it's one thing to write code that works, but the real goal, the mark of a great programmer, is to write code that's not just correct, but also elegant and efficient. So let's make our code better.
So, how do we fix this? How do we make our code stop asking pointless questions? We're going to bring in two new keywords, elif, which is just a squished-together version of elsif, and else. These are the keys to building a much smarter chain of logic. This table right here, it's the perfect way to see the difference. Think of it this way. Using a bunch of ifs is like going through a checklist. You have to look at every single item, even if you found what you were looking for on the first line. But the if, elif, else way, that's like a multiple-choice test. The second you find the correct answer, you circle it and you move on. You don't even look at the other options. Way more efficient, right?
And here's what that looks like in our code. It's so much cleaner. If x is less than y, it prints the message. And then it just stops. The whole block is done. It completely ignores the elif and else. And that else at the end, that's our safety net. If x isn't smaller and it's not bigger, well, what's left? It has to be equal. We don't even need to ask the third question. The logic just knows. Now that's smart code.
Okay, so that's great for simple comparisons. But what happens when our questions get a little more complicated? What if we need to check two things, or even more, all at once? That's where we can use keywords like and to build compound questions.
Let's take school grades. To get an A, your score has to be 90 or higher, and at the same time, it has to be 100 or lower. The and keyword is perfect for this. It lets us chain those two ideas together, and the whole thing is only true if both parts are true.
But check this out. This is one of those cool little tricks that makes people love Python. It's what we call Pythonic. Instead of writing it all out with and, you can literally just chain the comparisons together, just like you would in a math class. It means the exact same thing, but wow, is it easier to read. This is a perfect example of well-designed code. Okay, but can we make it even smarter? Believe it or not, yes. Think about how our if-elif chain works. If the code checks score greater than equal 90 and that's false, we move on. So by the time we get to the elif score greater than equal 80 line, we already know the score is less than 90. We don't have to check it again. The logic of the elif takes care of it for us, so we can drop the and part completely. All right, let's switch gears a little and look at a more modern tool in Python's toolkit, the match statement. This thing is awesome for a specific kind of problem, when you have one variable and you need to check it against a bunch of different specific values. I mean, just look at the difference here.
On the left, you've got this clunky if-elif chain repeating name equals over and over. But on the right, the match statement is so clean. You just say, hey, I want to match the variable name, and then you list out all the possible cases. It's just so much more organized.
And the way you write it is super simple. You start with match, followed by the variable. For each possibility, you use case. If you want to check for multiple things that lead to the same outcome, you just use this pipe symbol, the vertical line, which just means or. And that case under at the end, that's your default, your catch-all. It's the exact same idea as an else statement.
So let's take a step back and look at what we've done. We went from a simple but inefficient if statement to a much smarter if-elif chain, all the way to this really slick, modern match statement. And that journey really gets to the heart of a big idea in programming. Getting the right answer is just the first step. The real goal is to find the best way to get that answer.
So, here you have it. This is your toolkit for making decisions in Python. If kicks the whole thing off. Elif is the smart way to ask the next question. Else is your backup plan. And lets you ask more complex questions. And match is your go-to for checking one thing against many possibilities.
So, what does this all mean? It means you can now give your code a brain. You can teach it to react, to adapt, to make choices. So the only question left for you is, now that you know how to teach your code to think, what are you going to build?